Usually when you buy something, there is this fundamental expectation of, well, market transparency.
Right. Perfect information.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about the most basic transaction we do, like going to the grocery store. You walk in, you pick up an apple, and there is a very clear sign right next to it that says it costs, I don't know, exactly $1.
Yeah, a clean binary exchange.
Right. You hand the cashier your dollar, they hand you the apple, and the transaction is complete. We find immense comfort in that predictability,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as a consumer, that transparency allows you to make rational, informed decisions about your life, your resources, your physical well-being.
Right. We like our financial obligations to be visible and proportional to what we're actually receiving.
Yes,
but then
you step across the threshold into the American healthcare system.
Suddenly, standard economics just entirely evaporate.
They really do.
That neat little price tag on the apple isn't just invisible. It's constantly changing shape depending on who is holding the apple.
Yeah, or what day of the week it is.
Or what secret contract your employer signed, like 3 years ago.
Right. It's incredibly murky.
It is. You're looking at a medical and financial landscape that operates on a level of opacity that makes corporate boardroom negotiations look like a children's game.
Yeah, because you are buying a service where you literally don't know the price until weeks after you've already consumed it.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
So welcome to the deep dive. Whether you're listening to this during your morning commute or studying in a library or, winding down after a long, grueling shift anywhere in the world, we are incredibly glad you're here with us.
We really are.
Because today we have a very specific critical mission. We are delivering the ultimate survival guide to decoding the American healthcare system.
It's basically a systemic labyrinth.
It really is. We're taking this fierce, complex, and notoriously expensive web, and we're breaking down the mechanics of how it actually operates so you can navigate it with absolute confidence.
And we should explicitly establish the stakes here early on because they are unparalleled.
Yeah, lay it out for us.
Well, if you make a communication error in a typical professional setting, maybe you misread an email thread or you misuse some industry jargon during a Zoom presentation.
Just apologize, right?
Right. The fallout is usually just a temporary sting of embarrassment. You move on. But within the American healthcare apparatus, miscommunication is an entirely different beast.
Oh, yeah.
Misunderstanding a single field on a consent form or failing to ask the exact right question about your insurance network before surgery.
Or just lacking the specific vocabulary to tell a doctor what's actually hurting.
Exactly. These aren't just social faux pas. They can be physically dangerous and financially devastating.
We are literally talking about the intersection of life, death, and bankruptcy. I mean, if you don't know the rules, the system will absolutely crush your wallet and potentially compromise your actual care.
Precisely. And I want to validate a very important feeling right up front for you.
Please do, because it's stressful.
If you have ever interacted with this system and walked away feeling completely overwhelmed, confused, or even defeated, you need to know that you are in the majority.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Not at all. Even native-born Americans who have lived inside this specific healthcare ecosystem their entire lives and speak English as their first language, they fundamentally struggle to comprehend its mechanics.
Because the complexity is objective. It's built in.
It is baked into the very architecture of the industry. So if you're feeling lost, that is a perfectly rational response to a deeply irrational system.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We aren't just going to throw a glossary of medical terms at you and wish you luck.
No, that wouldn't help.
Right, we're going to walk you chronologically through the entire life cycle of a medical encounter.
From start to finish.
Exactly. We have to start with the invisible rules that govern your existence before you even see a doctor. The mechanics of buying and using insurance.
It's the only logical way to approach this.
Right. And from there, we'll follow that thread all the way to the scheduling desk, into the examination room, over to the pharmacy counter, through the absolute chaos of the emergency room, and finally...
the dreaded part.
Yeah, the moment you open that terrifying final bill in the mail.
Because you simply cannot be an empowered, effective patient until you understand the underlying financial matrix that dictates your access to care.
So true.
Long before you step foot in a clinical setting, your options have already been restricted, categorized, and monetized by the financial rules of your insurance policy. We have to construct that foundational understanding first.
All right, let's pull apart this financial matrix. The vocabulary of American health insurance can feel completely impenetrable,
Oh, an absolute alphabet soup.
like an ancient manuscript or something. Legal jargon designed specifically to make you just give up and stop asking questions.
Which is often the point.
Right. But once you understand the economic incentives behind these terms, they actually start to make a twisted kind of sense. So let's translate this, starting with the very first toll booth you encounter, the premium.
So the premium is the absolute baseline. Think of it as your monthly subscription fee to the insurance pool.
Like a gym membership.
Yeah, exactly. You are required to pay this specific dollar amount every single month, regardless of whether you ever see a doctor, step into a hospital, or pick up a single prescription.
So even if I'm perfectly healthy, I pay.
You pay. It is the baseline cost of simply holding the policy.
Got it.
And for the vast majority of working adults in the U.S., this policy is employer-sponsored.
Meaning I don't pay the whole thing.
Right. The heavy lifting of this premium is usually split. Your employer pays a portion, and your portion is automatically deducted from your paycheck before that money ever even hits your bank account.
Okay, so it's the cost of entry. I pay my premium, I'm officially in the club, my insurance is active. But then, inevitably, I actually get sick. I need to go to the doctor, and I slam right into the next major hurdle, the deductible.
Ah, the deductible.
And I have to admit, the deductible just infuriates me.
You're definitely not alone there.
I mean, if I'm already paying thousands of dollars a year in premiums just to hold the policy,
Oh.
why am I suddenly asked to pay entirely out of my own pocket the moment I actually need to use the service?
It feels wrong. Right.
It feels like I'm being double charged before the insurance company takes on any actual risk.
That frustration is universal. And to understand why the deductible exists, you really have to look at it through the lens of insurance economics.
Okay, break it down for me.
There's this concept called moral hazard. Insurance companies operate on the theory that if healthcare is entirely free at the point of service, like if your premium covers absolutely everything from day one, patients might overutilize the system.
Meaning they'll just go to the doctor for every little thing.
Exactly. They might go for every minor sniffle or demand unnecessary, wildly expensive scans. So by instituting a deductible, the insurance company forces the patient to have skin in the game.
So it's essentially a financial deterrent.
Yeah.
They are intentionally making it sting a little bit, so I think twice before making an appointment.
That is exactly it. The deductible is the specific predetermined dollar amount you must pay entirely out of your own pocket for your medical services each year.
Wait, before the insurance pays anything?
Before your insurance company contributes a single cent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if your plan has a $2,000 deductible, you are entirely on the hook for the first $2,000 of medical bills generated that calendar year.
Yeah.
The insurance company just sits back and watches you pay until you hit that threshold.
Okay, let's unpack this. I always like to visualize the deductible as a massive, intimidating bouncer standing outside an exclusive club.
I love that analogy.
Right. Because you already paid your monthly premium just to have the privilege of standing in the line outside.
Yep.
But now you actually want to go inside the club and use the perks. And the bouncer stops you, puts his hand on your chest, and demands a steep cover charge. You have to pay that cover charge out of your own pocket before you are allowed to step foot on the dance floor.
That visualization captures the friction perfectly. However, the system isn't entirely without nuance. There is essentially a VIP line that allows you to bypass that bouncer completely.
Wait, really? How do I get in the VIP line?
Well, under the Affordable Care Act, most preventative services are legally exempt from the deductible.
Okay, that's a huge caveat.
It is. Things like your annual physical checkup, routine preventative vaccinations, and standard age-appropriate screenings like mammograms or colonoscopies, those are covered by the insurance immediately. You walk right past the bouncer.
Which, I mean, makes sense economically, right? The insurance company would much rather pay $100 for your checkup today than pay $100,000 for a massive heart attack you have 3 years from now because you never got your blood pressure checked.
Precisely. It is way cheaper to keep you healthy than to treat a catastrophic illness.
Right.
But the moment that annual checkup transitions into a sick visit, meaning you go to the doctor specifically to diagnose why your knee is swelling or to investigate a persistent fever, the VIP line closes.
The bouncer steps back in.
The bouncer steps back in, and that visit is suddenly subject to the deductible.
Okay, so I pay my premium. I eventually meet my deductible bouncer by paying out of pocket. Now we arrive at two terms that sound incredibly similar but operate completely differently.
Copay and coinsurance.
Yes. People use these interchangeably all the time, but confusing them can lead to a massive shock when the bill arrives. Can you clarify these?
Yeah, they are distinct mechanisms for cost sharing. A copay or copayment is a fixed, highly predictable, flat dollar amount that you are required to pay right at the door at the time of service.
Okay, so a static fee.
Exactly. You might look at your insurance card and see a $25 copay to visit your primary care doctor, maybe a $50 copay to see a specialized cardiologist.
Or like a $200 copay to walk into the emergency room.
Right. You know this exact number before you even pick up your car keys to drive to the clinic.
It's predictable. It brings us back to that grocery store Apple transparency. But coinsurance is where the math gets predatory, doesn't it?
It really does. Because coinsurance is not a flat fee, it is a percentage.
Ugh, percentages.
Yeah. Coinsurance usually kicks in after you have successfully met your deductible. Let's say your plan features a 20% coinsurance rate.
Okay.
If you require a minor surgical procedure that costs $1,000, you don't pay a fixed $25 copay. You are responsible for 20% of that total bill.
Which is $200.
Right. And your insurance company steps in to pay the remaining 80%.
And the danger there is that healthcare costs in the U.S. are wildly inflated.
Astronomical.
So 20% of a standard doctor's visit isn't terrible. But 20% of a $50,000 emergency appendectomy, that's $10,000.
Exactly. That percentage exposes the patient to the raw, hyperinflated prices that hospitals charge.
Which brings us, thankfully, to the one term in this entire financial matrix that functions as a parachute.
The out-of-pocket maximum.
Yes. So tell me about this because it sounds like a lifesaver.
If there is a silver lining to be found in American health insurance, this is it. The out-of-pocket maximum is your ultimate financial safety net. It is the absolute legal ceiling on what you will be required to pay for covered medical services within a single calendar year.
So let's play out a worst-case scenario. Let's say my out-of-pocket maximum is set at $8,000.
Okay.
I have a terrible medical year. I pay my full deductible. I am hit with endless specialist copays.
Yeah.
And I have to pay 20% coinsurance for a major hospital stay. I am just bleeding money.
Right.
But the moment all of those accumulated payments hit exactly $8,000,
What happens?
the bleeding stops.
Completely. The insurance company takes over. Once you hit that out-of-pocket maximum ceiling, your insurance is legally obligated to cover 100% of all remaining covered in-network medical costs for the rest of that calendar year.
Wow.
Your personal financial liability cannot rise above that specific number.
Okay, but notice you just slipped a very important, very dangerous qualifier into that sentence.
They did.
You said covered in-network medical costs. This brings us to the trap door hidden beneath this entire matrix.
The network trap.
Yes, the concept of the network. Let's get into this.
It is arguably the most hazardous feature of the system. Every single insurance plan is built around a network.
And what exactly is that?
You can think of this network as an exclusive proprietary list of doctors, surgical clinics, hospitals, and specialized labs that have all signed binding contracts with your specific insurance company.
Okay.
They have agreed to provide their medical services to you at heavily negotiated, discounted rates. These providers are considered in-network.
So they're playing on the same team. The insurance company drives volume to the doctor, and in exchange, the doctor accepts a lower price.
Precisely.
But what happens if I go rogue? What if I decide to go to a doctor or a facility that is not on that proprietary list, someone who is out of network?
Then you are intentionally stepping outside the protective bubble of those negotiated rates. You are entering the Wild West of medical pricing.
The Wild West.
Yeah. If you go out of network, that doctor or hospital has absolutely no contract with your insurance company. They are not bound by any negotiated discounts whatsoever.
Oh.
In this scenario, your insurance company will either cover a drastically smaller fraction of the bill, or, depending on the strictness of your plan, they might cover absolutely nothing at all.
I really want to make sure we underline the severity of this. Going out of network isn't like paying a tiny, $3 convenience fee at an out-of-network ATM.
Oh, not at all.
It can mean the difference between paying a predictable $300 negotiated rate for an MRI in network and receiving a devastating unnegotiated bill for $4,000 for the exact same MRI machine simply because the facility didn't have a contract with your specific insurance tier.
And the truly insidious part is when you don't even have a choice in the matter.
Right. The surprise bill?
Right.
This is a scenario that literally haunts people.
It's terrifying.
Let's say I do everything by the book. I am a highly responsible patient. I check my insurance portal. I find an in-network hospital for a scheduled surgery.
Okay.
I verify the lead surgeon is in network, the nursing staff is in network, I am fully in the bubble.
You did everything right.
But while I'm unconscious on the operating table, an independent anesthesiologist comes in to monitor my vitals and administer the anesthesia. And unbeknownst to me, that specific anesthesiologist works as an independent contractor who happens to be out of network with my plan. I wake up, I recover, and 6 weeks later, I open my mail to find a bankrupting bill from a doctor I never even consciously met, charging me full retail price because they weren't in my network. I mean, how is that even legal?
For decades, it was perfectly legal, and it was a profound crisis known as balance billing or surprise billing. The hospital would essentially trap the patient.
That's horrifying.
You controlled what you could, but the independent contractors operating inside the facility, anesthesiologists, emergency room physicians, radiologists, were entirely outside of your control.
But that changed, right?
Yes, there has been a massive shift. In 2022, the federal government implemented a crucial piece of legislation called the No Surprises Act.
Thank goodness. How does the No Surprises Act actually function mechanically? Like, does it ban out-of-network doctors completely?
It doesn't ban them, but it shields the patient from the financial fallout. The act dictates that if you receive emergency care, or if you receive non-emergency care at an in-network facility, you cannot be billed more than your standard in-network cost-sharing amounts for services provided by out-of-network doctors.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that out-of-network anesthesiologist can no longer send you that massive bill. Instead, the doctor and the insurance company are forced into an arbitration process to fight over the payment amount amongst themselves, leaving you, the patient, completely out of the crossfire.
It has successfully closed one of the most terrifying trapdoors in the system.
It really has.
That is a massive relief, but it just highlights how vigilant you have to be. Now, before we leave the financial matrix of insurance, we need to touch on plan architectures.
Ah, the acronym.
Yes, the alphabet soup. When you sign up for an insurance policy, you usually have to choose between a few different structural models, which are almost always presented as acronyms. The two most dominant are HMO and PPO.
Very common.
And choosing between these two fundamentally alters how you interact with the medical world.
They represent two very different philosophies of healthcare management. Let's start with the HMO, which stands for Health Maintenance Organization.
Okay, an HMO.
The defining characteristic of an HMO is rigid structure and heavily managed care. When you enroll in an HMO, you are immediately required to select a primary care physician, or PCP.
Right.
This individual doctor becomes the absolute center of your medical universe. They are your gatekeeper.
So if I wake up on a Tuesday and I have a bizarre, incredibly itchy rash spreading up my arm, and I know exactly what it is because I've had it before, I can't just pick up the phone and call a local dermatologist to get a cream.
Absolutely not. In an HMO system, you cannot bypass the gatekeeper.
Wow.
You must schedule an appointment with your primary care physician first. They will examine the rash, and only if they clinically agree that your condition requires a specialist, they will formally write you a permission slip known in the system as a referral.
And without that
official referral processed through the insurance company, the HMO will entirely refuse to pay for your visit to the dermatologist.
That seems incredibly inefficient. I mean, I had to pay for a doctor's visit just to get permission to pay for another doctor's visit. Why would anyone choose an HMO if it's that restrictive?
Economics. Plain and simple. The trade-off for dealing with that restrictive, heavily managed care is that HMOs generally offer significantly lower monthly premiums and lower out-of-pocket costs at the point of service.
So they're cheaper up front.
Exactly. The insurance company is betting that by forcing you through a primary care gatekeeper, they can drastically reduce the number of unnecessary specialist visits and expensive procedures, thereby keeping the overall costs down for everyone in the pool.
Okay, but what if I despise that lack of economy? What if I want the absolute freedom to direct my own healthcare and go straight to the experts whenever I want?
Then you need to select a PPO, a preferred provider organization.
PPO.
A PPO grants the patient tremendous autonomy. You are not required to select a primary care physician, and the concept of the referral essentially doesn't exist.
So if I wake up with that rash,
You can simply pull up your list of in-network dermatologists, call one directly, and schedule an appointment. You act as your own navigator.
but as we know, in this system, freedom is never free.
Correct. The luxury of bypassing the gatekeeper comes at a steep premium. PPO plans almost universally feature significantly higher monthly premiums, higher annual deductibles, and greater cost-sharing responsibilities. You are paying a premium for flexibility.
Speaking of permission slips, there is one final, deeply frustrating mechanism we have to unpack before we move into the actual clinics.
Prior authorization.
Yes. It's a term that makes both patients and doctors clench their jaws. And I want to push back on this concept because it honestly sounds like the insurance company is practicing medicine without a license.
It's a very contentious mechanism. Prior authorization, sometimes called pre-approval, is essentially the insurance company inserting itself directly into the doctor-patient relationship.
How so?
Let's say your doctor examines you and decides you desperately need an MRI for your back pain, or they prescribe a highly specialized, expensive medication. Before the doctor can actually execute that plan, they have to pause and formally ask the insurance company for permission.
Even though they are the medical expert.
Yes. The doctor's office must submit extensive clinical paperwork proving to the insurance administrators that the treatment is strictly medically necessary and that cheaper alternatives have already been exhausted.
And what happens while we wait for these administrators, who have never even examined me, to review my doctor's notes?
The patient waits. It introduces massive, sometimes dangerous delays into the treatment timeline.
That's awful.
And if the insurance company decides the paperwork isn't compelling enough, they can simply deny the authorization. If the doctor proceeds anyway, or if the patient demands the MRI without the authorization, the insurance company will entirely deny the claim, leaving the patient to shoulder the total cost.
So it's an aggressive cost containment strategy.
Exactly. It forces medical professionals to spend hours doing administrative battle just to get their patients the care they originally prescribed.
Wow. So to summarize our foundation, before a doctor even touches you with a stethoscope, you are already playing a high-stakes, multi-layered game of financial chess.
You really are.
You're managing premiums, calculating deductibles, navigating networks, and waiting for authorizations. But let's assume you've mapped your financial matrix. You know your boundaries. Now we cross the threshold. How do you actually get into the room with a medical professional without triggering a bureaucratic disaster?
The transition from theory to practice almost always begins with a phone call. While digital scheduling portals are slowly gaining traction, the vast majority of medical appointments in the United States are still orchestrated over the phone. And there's a very specific, almost ritualistic choreography to this conversation with the medical receptionist. It requires precision.
We want to arm you with the exact architecture of this conversation so you can navigate it flawlessly. Because when the receptionist picks up the phone, they are managing a chaotic front desk.
Highly chaotic.
So you need to immediately provide them with 3 distinct pieces of data.
Yeah.
Your status as a patient, the specific reason for your visit, and your scheduling parameters. Don't make them guess.
No, be direct.
A perfect, friction-free script sounds like this. Hi, I would like to schedule an appointment with Dr. Martinez. I am a new patient, and I need to establish care and get a general checkup. Do you have any availability in the next 3 weeks?
That is highly efficient, and you just alter the variables if you have an acute problem. You'd say, "Hi, I am an existing patient. I have been experiencing severe lower right abdominal pain for the past 2 days, and I need to be seen as soon as possible. What is your earliest available slot?"
Nice.
By framing it this way, you allow the receptionist to immediately triage your request and look at the correct schedule.
Once you establish the when, the receptionist is immediately going to pivot to the how, as in, how are you paying for this? They will ask for your insurance details.
Yes, have that ready.
We should always have your physical insurance card right in front of you. They will ask for the name of the carrier, the plan type like whether it's an HMO or PPO, and they will ask for your specific member ID number. But this moment right here brings us to the most critical juncture of the entire phone call.
Yes, the golden question.
The golden question.
Before you confirm the date, and absolutely before you hang up the phone, you must ask one very specific, precisely worded question. Can you confirm that the doctor is in network with my specific insurance plan?
And we cannot stress the phrasing of this enough. You can never, ever assume. It doesn't matter if your best friend swears by this clinic.
No.
It doesn't matter if the doctor's office is physically located across the street from your apartment. It doesn't even matter if the logo of your insurance company is printed on the clinic's front door.
Exactly. The linguistic trap here is the word accept.
Yes. Explain that.
Receptionists will frequently say, yes, we accept your insurance. But in the American Medical Billing Dictionary, Accepting an insurance and being in-network with an insurance are two wildly different legal statuses.
Okay, wait, how can they accept it but not be in-network?
An out-of-network doctor might happily accept your insurance by agreeing to file the paperwork on your behalf as a courtesy. But because they don't have a contract, they won't apply the negotiated discounts, and you will be hit with a massive balance bill.
That is so sneaky.
It is. You must force the receptionist to use the words, yes, the doctor is legally in-network.
It's incredible how much weight rests on that one hyphenated word. Okay, so you successfully navigate the phone call. The day of the appointment arrives. You walk into the clinic, approach the front desk, and you are immediately handed a clipboard loaded with a mountain of dense paperwork. We call this the paperwork trinity at check-in. It sets the legal terms of your visit.
It is a non-negotiable ritual. The first document in the Trinity is your medical history form.
The biological resume.
Exactly. This is your comprehensive biological resume. The clinic needs to know about your past surgeries, chronic illnesses, current medications, and your family's health history to establish a baseline of risk.
And I want to offer a very specific piece of advice for our international listeners here. If you are currently taking a medication that was prescribed back in your home country, and you don't know the American brand name or the exact English translation, do not just leave that line blank. Write down the complex chemical name of the drug in your native language. The medical professionals reviewing this form have access to massive global pharmacological databases. They can easily cross-reference international medication names to see exactly what you're taking.
Because leaving it blank can lead to dangerous drug interactions.
Exactly.
That is an incredibly vital safety measure. The second document you must confront is the HIPAA consent form. HIPAA stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which is a massive piece of federal legislation.
I always see people complaining about signing this form, but what does it actually mean for my privacy? I mean, I'm handing over my most intimate, vulnerable biological data. When I sign this form, what am I legally agreeing to? Does it mean the clinic can just broadcast my data to whoever asks?
Quite the opposite, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When you sign the HIPAA acknowledgement, you are actually confirming that you have been informed of your federal rights. HIPAA creates a legally binding ironclad fortress around your medical data. It strictly prohibits the doctor, the nurses, and the hospital administrators from sharing your protected health information with anyone outside of your direct care team without your explicit written authorization.
So if I call out sick from work, my boss can't just call my doctor's office to verify why I'm out.
Absolutely not. The clinic will not even confirm to your employer that you are a patient there. They cannot disclose information to your spouse, your parents, or your landlord without your signature.
So who do they share it with?
The only entities they are legally permitted to share your data with, beyond the specialists who might need to coordinate your care, are your insurance company and the billing department, simply so the financial transaction can be processed.
Which perfectly and somewhat ominously transitions us to the third and final piece of the check-in paperwork.
The financial responsibility form.
This one always feels like signing a blank check.
Because in essence, it is. This is a binding legal contract where the clinic establishes the ultimate chain of liability. The form essentially says, we will do you the courtesy of trying to bill your insurance company first. We will submit the codes and wait for their payment.
Right.
However, if your insurance company denies the claim for any reason, or if you haven't met your annual deductible, or if we discover you are out of network, you fully acknowledge that you are the one left holding the bag.
You are personally, legally responsible for paying the entirety of this bill.
Yes.
It's sobering. You sign the contract, you hand the clipboard back, and you wait. Eventually, the nurse calls your name. You are led down the hallway into the examination room, and the heavy door clicks shut. You are finally alone.
And then the doctor walks in.
Now, the sprawling financial matrix we just discussed fades into the background, and the complex cultural dynamics of interpersonal communication take center stage.
And if we contextualize this globally, this exact moment in the examination room is where many international patients experience a profound and sometimes paralyzing culture shock.
Why is that?
We have to recognize that in many parts of the world, across various countries in Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America, the traditional doctor-patient relationship is deeply paternalistic and strictly hierarchical.
Right. In those systems, the doctor is viewed as the undisputed ultimate authority figure. They wear the white coat, they hold the knowledge, and they issue the orders.
Exactly. The doctor speaks, and the patient's role is to listen passively and comply. In many of those cultures, Actively challenging a doctor's clinical judgment, requesting alternative treatment plans, or demanding to see a different specialist for a second opinion can be viewed as highly disrespectful.
Like an insult to the doctor's honor.
Yes. But if you bring that passive mindset into the American healthcare system, you are going to get completely run over.
We need to completely eradicate that hierarchical mindset the moment you walk through the clinic doors.
We absolutely do, because the American medical culture operates on a fundamentally different premise. Doctors in the U.S. are trained under a model of shared decision-making.
Shared decision-making. I like that.
They do not want a passive recipient of information. They actively expect and rely upon patients being engaged participants in their own care. It is a system built on liability and informed consent. They want a partner who will speak up.
So it's an exercise in aggressive self-advocacy. You have to empower yourself to drive the conversation. If the doctor uses a complex piece of anatomical jargon you don't understand, you don't just nod and pretend you get it.
You have to stop them.
Right. You physically stop them and say, "Excuse me, can you explain that in simpler terms?" If they casually suggest a surgical procedure, you don't just book the date. You push back. You ask, what are the non-surgical alternative treatments? What are the specific statistical risks of this procedure?
Yes.
And if their answers leave you feeling uneasy or unconvinced, you look them right in the eye and say, "Thank you, but I would like to get a second opinion before I proceed."
And it is absolutely critical for listeners to understand that an American doctor will not be personally offended by that pushback.
Really? They won't get mad?
No, seeking a second opinion is a standard, heavily encouraged operating procedure. In fact, many insurance companies mandate a second opinion before they will authorize major surgeries. By asking questions, you signal to the doctor that you are an engaged, serious patient, which actually elevates the level of care you receive.
Now, I want to address a major barrier to this kind of active participation. What if you want to ask all these brilliant questions, but English is not your first language, and the sheer volume of medical terminology is making it impossible to advocate for yourself?
It's a scary position to be in.
You aren't just out of luck, though, right? You have deeply ingrained federal rights to protect you in this scenario.
You do. Under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, any hospital, clinic, or medical facility that receives any form of federal funding, which includes almost every major facility because they accept Medicare and Medicaid, is legally mandated to provide a qualified medical interpreter.
Free of charge.
Completely free of charge to the patient if it is requested.
So you don't have to rely on your 10-year-old child to translate a cancer diagnosis for you?
Never. The clinic must provide a professional who understands complex medical terminology in both languages. This interpretation can be provided by a person physically in the room, over a dedicated phone line, or via a video tablet.
That's incredible.
You have the right to fully comprehend what is happening to your body, and you never have to guess simply because of a language barrier.
Okay, let's unpack the core interaction of the visit. The doctor sits down, opens their laptop, looks at you, and asks the classic opening question. So what brings you in today?
The standard opening.
How you answer this question dictates the entire trajectory of the appointment. Describing a physical symptom to a doctor is exactly like giving a police sketch of a suspect who just mugged you.
I love this analogy.
Imagine running into a police station and just yelling, "A guy robbed me!" The police have absolutely nothing to go on. They can't narrow down the suspects. Similarly, if you sit on the exam table and simply say, "My stomach hurts," that is vastly too vague. The stomach pain could be indigestion, an ulcer, appendicitis, or a heart attack. We need highly specific data points to catch the biological culprit.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the diagnostic challenge. American medical schools teach physicians to gather information using a highly structured algorithmic framework called the History of Present Illness, or HPI.
The HPI?
Yes. This framework consists of 6 specific dimensions. The doctor is literally running down a mental checklist of these 6 dimensions while you speak. If you understand this framework, you can prepackage your symptom description perfectly before you even leave your house, dramatically speeding up the diagnostic process.
Let's weave through these 6 dimensions. Imagine sitting on that table. The doctor doesn't just want to know you are in pain. They need the precise geography. This is dimension 1, location.
You must be geographically precise on your own anatomy. The phrase, "my stomach," covers a massive amount of real estate with dozens of different organs. You need to narrow the grid.
Like what? Give me an example.
Instead of that, say, "I have pain specifically in my lower right abdomen." Or instead of a vague, "my head hurts," you isolate it. "The pain is localized entirely behind my left eye." That immediately narrows the doctor's mental list of suspects.
Once they have the location, they need the timeline. Dimension 2 is duration. When did the suspect first appear on the scene, and how have they behaved since?
The doctor is looking for patterns. Is the issue acute or chronic? You want to provide a specific timestamp.
Right.
The pain started suddenly 3 days ago, and it has been a constant, unyielding pressure ever since. Or, conversely, this has been happening intermittently for 2 months. It flares up for about an hour after I eat, and then completely disappears.
This brings us to Dimension 3, which is honestly my favorite because it's where the nuances of the English vocabulary become absolutely critical. Character or quality. What does the symptom actually feel like? And this is where patients often get stuck because pain is such a generic word.
This is where precision is paramount because doctors literally categorize physiological problems based on the specific adjectives you use.
Right.
If you describe a sharp pain, that implies a sudden, intense, highly localized stabbing sensation like being poked with a needle. This often points to nerve pain or acute tears.
Okay, what about dull?
If you call it a dull pain, you are describing a continuous, aching, heavy sensation, which often points to muscle issues or organ inflammation.
What if the pain has a rhythm to it, like throbbing?
Throbbing is a crucial keyword. It means the pain pulses, typically in sync with your heartbeat, which immediately points the doctor toward vascular issues or migraines. Burning feels hot, stinging, and caustic, often associated with nerve damage or acid reflux. Cramping is a severe, squeezing, constricting sensation that comes in intense waves, which is highly common in the digestive and reproductive systems.
And what about radiating? That's a word you hear constantly on medical dramas.
Because it is a massive diagnostic clue, radiating pain means the sensation originates at a specific epicenter and actively travels outward along a pathway.
Right, like moving.
Exactly. If you tell a doctor, I have severe lower back pain that radiates down the back of my left leg all the way to my calf, that specific description instantly points them away from a simple muscle strain and directly toward a compressed nerve issue, like sciatica.
And we should also mention neurological sensations that aren't necessarily painful but are deeply concerning, right?
Yeah.
Like tingling, which is that static pins and needles feeling when your foot falls asleep, or numbness, which is the total terrifying absence of sensation.
Those are red flags for doctors, absolutely.
Dimension 4 is about quantifying the misery, severity.
This is universally communicated in American medicine via the 1 to 10 scale.
1 being fine, 10 being terrible.
Right. 1 is the mild annoyance of a paper cut. 10 is the absolute worst, most blinding agony you can physically imagine. You need to anchor your pain to this scale to give the doctor a metric. It normally sits at a manageable 4, but when I twist my torso suddenly, it spikes to an agonizing 8.
Okay, Dimension 5 asks you to play detective regarding cause and effect. Aggravating and alleviating factors. What makes the suspect angry and what calms them down?
You are looking for triggers and remedies. Does the knee pain get worse when you walk upstairs but feels fine walking on flat ground? Does eating rich, spicy food trigger the nausea?
Or does lying flat on your back make the chest pressure worse?
Yes. Does taking an over-the-counter ibuprofen offer temporary relief, or does it do absolutely nothing? These reactions help the doctor understand the mechanics of the problem.
And finally, Dimension 6, associated symptoms. What else is happening at the crime scene?
You might have made the appointment specifically for a severe headache, but the doctor desperately needs to know if that primary symptom brought any friends along.
Right.
Is the headache accompanied by a high fever, extreme nausea, or a sudden severe sensitivity to bright light? Those associated symptoms are the vital clues that turn a generic headache diagnosis into a highly specific migraine or even a life-threatening meningitis diagnosis.
So if you want to be the ultimate empowered patient, you shouldn't be trying to remember all of this on the spot while wearing a paper gown. You should physically write all of this down before your appointment. Do the police sketch at home, bring your notes with you, and read from them.
I cannot emphasize enough how much doctors appreciate a prepared, organized patient. It drastically cuts down on the time spent trying to extract the story, and it significantly improves the accuracy of the final diagnosis because you aren't forgetting critical details under pressure.
All right, so you deliver your perfectly structured 6-dimension symptom description. The doctor is impressed. They run a few tests, make a confident diagnosis, agree on a treatment plan, and decide to prescribe you a medication.
The consultation is a massive success.
You walk out of the clinic doors. But in the American system, the transaction isn't over. The doctor doesn't just open a drawer in their desk and hand you a bottle of pills.
Not at all.
You now have to cross into an entirely separate, massively complex, commercial ecosystem, the pharmacy.
This represents a major structural and architectural difference from how healthcare is delivered in many other countries, where the clinic and the dispensary are often integrated.
Right.
In the United States, pharmacies are largely independent, retail-driven businesses. When your doctor decides you need an antibiotic, they don't hand you a physical piece of paper with a scribbled prescription anymore. They transmit that order electronically through a secure network to a massive retail chain like a CVS, a Walgreens, or a pharmacy located inside a massive supermarket.
Right, you have to drive to a completely separate store, and when you arrive at that counter, you are immediately confronted by the great financial divide of American pharmacology, brand name versus generic medication.
A massive divide.
I really want to unpack this because it is baffling to walk into a pharmacy and realize that a tiny bottle of pills can cost $300, while the exact same chemical formulation sitting right next to it costs $12. How does the market support that massive discrepancy?
It entirely comes down to the mechanics of United States patent law and corporate monopolies.
Okay.
When a massive pharmaceutical company pours billions of dollars into research and development to invent a novel, groundbreaking drug, the government grants them a patent. This patent gives them a strict, legally protected monopoly on that specific chemical compound for a set number of years.
So nobody else can make it.
Right. Because they have zero competition, they can sell that drug under a heavily marketed, catchy brand name, and they can charge exceptionally high, sometimes exorbitant prices to recoup their R&D costs and generate profit.
But that monopoly doesn't last forever.
No.
Eventually, that patent falls off a cliff.
Exactly. The patent legally expires. And the very moment it does, the gates open. Other competing manufacturing companies are legally allowed to reverse engineer the drug and mass produce it.
And because they didn't have to spend billions on the initial research?
They can sell it for a fraction of the cost. They sell it under its complex scientific chemical name. This is the generic version.
So to translate that to the real world, Advil is the expensive, heavily marketed brand name with the shiny commercials. But the actual chemical doing the work inside your body is just ibuprofen.
Yes.
Tylenol is just a brand name. The chemical is acetaminophen. The famous antidepressant Zoloft is just the generic chemical sertraline.
Precisely. And the most important thing for consumers to understand is that this isn't a situation where the cheaper version is lower quality.
That's a huge misconception.
It is. By strict federal law, enforced by the FDA, the generic version must contain the exact same active pharmaceutical ingredients, deliver the exact same dosage, and meet the exact same rigorous safety and efficacy standards as the expensive brand name. The chemistry interacting with your biology is fundamentally identical. The only tangible difference is the marketing budget and the price tag.
So the actionable rule for the listener is incredibly simple. Every single time a doctor prescribes you a medication, and every single time you stand at the pharmacy counter, you must ask the question, is there a generic version of this available? Doing so will save you an unbelievable amount of money over your lifetime.
It is the easiest, most reliable financial win available to you in the entire healthcare system.
Okay, so you ask for the generic, and the pharmacist hands you a little amber bottle. Now we have to decode the label. It has the standard data, your name, the dosage instructions, the total quantity of pills, and how many refills your doctor authorized. But the most critical pieces of information on that bottle are those brightly colored neon stickers slapped all over the sides, the auxiliary labels.
People tend to ignore these, but they are crucial.
They really are.
Those auxiliary stickers are absolutely not polite suggestions. They are vital clinical safety warnings. They communicate critical instructions about how the chemical compound interacts with your specific biology, your diet, and your environment.
Let's run through a few. You might see a bright yellow sticker that says, "Take with food."
Right, which means the medication is highly caustic or irritating to the gastric lining. If you take it on an empty stomach, it could cause severe cramping, severe nausea, or even burn an ulcer into your stomach over time. The food acts as a necessary physical buffer.
What about the drowsiness one?
You might see another that says may cause drowsiness, which is not just a side effect warning. It is a legal and safety liability warning that the drug acts as a central nervous system depressant, and you absolutely should not operate a vehicle or heavy machinery after taking it.
But the most important sticker, the one that causes the most global health issues when ignored, is the one slapped on every bottle of antibiotics that explicitly says, finish all medication.
Oh.
Why is that instruction so unbendingly crucial? If I take an antibiotic for 3 days and my fever is gone and I feel 100% better, why should I keep swallowing pills for another week?
Because if you stop early, you are actively contributing to one of the greatest threats in modern medicine: bacterial resistance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When you start an antibiotic regimen, the first few days of pills kill off the weakest, most susceptible bacteria. That's why you start feeling better. The sheer volume of the infection has dropped by, say, 90%.
Okay.
But that remaining 10% of the bacteria still alive inside you are the strongest, most genetically resilient, most mutated ones. If you stop taking the medicine early because you feel subjectively better, you leave those super strong bacteria alive.
And they multiply.
They will multiply, the infection will return with a vengeance, and the original antibiotic will be completely useless because the bacteria have evolved to survive it. You must finish the entire prescribed course to annihilate every last cell.
That is terrifying and fascinating. Yeah. Now, beyond the prescription drop-off counter, pharmacies are essentially massive retail stores with endless aisles of over-the-counter or OTC medications.
Oh, the OTC aisles.
Walking down the cold and flu aisle when you are sick is an incredibly overwhelming experience because there are hundreds of brightly colored boxes promising to cure you. Let's do a rapid-fire navigation to help listeners cut through the marketing noise and identify the actual chemicals they need. Let's start with the most common aisle: pain and fever management.
You are generally choosing between 4 main chemical options here. Ibuprofen and naproxen are both non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs.
NSA.
Exactly. They reduce pain, they reduce fever, and crucially, they actively reduce physical inflammation and swelling in the tissue. Acetaminophen, on the other hand, operates differently. It is highly effective at reducing pain and fever, but it does absolutely nothing to treat inflammation.
What about aspirin?
Finally, aspirin does all 3, but it is also a mild blood thinner, which is why it is often prescribed daily for older adults to prevent blood clots and heart attacks, but should be avoided if you have bleeding issues.
What about the cold and flu aisle? It's a wall of acronyms.
You have to match the chemical to the specific symptom. If your sinuses are completely blocked and you have a stuffy nose, you need a decongestant, which shrinks the swollen blood vessels in your nasal passages.
Got it. What if my eyes are watering?
If your eyes are watering, you are sneezing, and you have allergies, you want an antihistamine, which blocks the body's allergic response. If you have a dry, hacking cough that keeps you awake, you need a cough suppressant to quiet the reflex. But if your chest is heavy and full of thick fluid, you absolutely do not want suppressant. You need an expectorant, which thins out the mucus so your body can efficiently cough it up and expel it.
What about the digestive aisle?
Again, match the tool to the problem. For immediate, sudden heartburn after a spicy meal, you want an antacid, which rapidly neutralizes the acid currently in your stomach. To prevent heartburn from happening over the long term, you take an acid reducer, which stops the stomach from producing as much acid in the first place. For diarrhea, you use an antidiarrheal to slow down the digestive tract. For constipation, you use a laxative to stimulate it.
And finally, the topicals, creams, and ointments.
If you have an incredibly itchy bug bite or a minor allergic rash, you apply a hydrocortisone cream, which is a mild localized steroid that reduces inflammation. And if you have a minor cut or scrape, you wash it and apply an antibiotic ointment, like the brand name Neosporin, to kill surface bacteria and prevent infection while it heals.
That is the ultimate cheat sheet. But I want to remind listeners of one crucial resource standing right in front of them. The person standing behind that elevated pharmacy counter wearing the crisp white coat is not just a glorified cashier who rings up your pills.
Not at all. American pharmacists hold a Doctor of Pharmacy degree. They have spent years undergoing rigorous clinical education specifically focused on biochemistry, drug interactions, and pharmacology. They are highly accessible medical experts.
So use them.
Yes. If you are standing in that cold and flu aisle, your head is pounding, you are staring at 50 different boxes of medicine, and you are terrified that an OTC drug might interact badly with your prescription blood pressure medication, do not guess. Walk directly up to the consultation window and ask the pharmacist for a recommendation. They are trained educators and will gladly guide you to the safest, most effective option.
Okay, so navigating scheduled doctor visits and pharmacy runs is great for routine, predictable maintenance. But let's shift gears. What happens when a medical need arises suddenly, violently, and without warning? Maybe it's 2 a.m. on a Sunday. Knowing exactly where to go in a crisis is quite literally a matter of life, death, and massive financial ruin.
This brings us to the critical, high-stakes choice between the emergency room and the urgent care clinic. Making the wrong geographical choice in a moment of panic can bankrupt you, or worse, delay life-saving care.
Let's start with the big one, the heavy hitter, the emergency room or the ER. When is it appropriate to utilize this massive resource?
You go to the emergency room for immediate life-threatening or limb-threatening conditions. We are talking about severe, crushing chest pain that radiates down your arm, the sudden inability to speak or move half your body indicating a stroke, massive, uncontrollable bleeding, sudden loss of consciousness, or complex bone-protruding fractures.
Truly awful stuff.
The ER is a massive, highly sophisticated medical fortress. It is open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And crucially, under a federal law called EMTALA, an emergency room is legally mandated to stabilize and treat any patient who walks through their doors, completely regardless of their insurance status, their citizenship, or their ability to pay the bill.
That sounds like a wonderful safety net. But that federal mandate comes with a staggering, almost incomprehensible price tag, doesn't it?
It does. Think about the economic overhead required to run that facility. The ER has to maintain a massive, hyper-expensive infrastructure. They have to pay teams of specialized trauma surgeons to sleep in the hospital just in case a multi-car pileup happens at 3 a.m.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They have to keep multi-million-dollar MRI and CT scanners powered up and staffed around the clock. Because of this astronomical overhead and the fact that they are forced to treat uninsured patients who can never pay their bills, the hospital cross-subsidizes those losses by charging massive premiums to everyone else.
What does that look like on a bill?
Simply walking through the sliding glass doors of an ER and sitting in a bed can generate a facility fee of $1,000 to $5,000 before a doctor even looks at you.
Okay, so that level of care and cost is reserved for true catastrophes. But what if my situation is somewhere in the middle? Let's say I'm in my kitchen slicing an avocado, the knife slips, and I slice my hand open. It's a deep cut. It is definitely going to need 5 or 6 stitches. But I am not bleeding to death, and I'm certainly not having a heart attack. Do I go to the ER and risk a $5,000 bill?
Absolutely not. In that scenario, you bypass the ER entirely and you go to an urgent care clinic. Urgent care facilities were explicitly designed to bridge the gap between a primary care doctor and the emergency room. They handle immediate, acute, but strictly non-life-threatening medical issues.
Give me some more examples of what belongs in an urgent care.
The avocado hand laceration that needs minor stitches. A rolled ankle that might be a simple sprain or a minor fracture, a sudden persistent high fever that you can't bring down, a mild allergic reaction to a new food, a severe urinary tract infection. These clinics have doctors, nurses, and basic x-ray machines, but they don't have the massive overhead of a trauma center.
And the financial difference.
It is night and day. Because they don't have to keep a neurosurgeon on call at 3 a.m., their overhead is vastly lower. An urgent care visit typically costs a fraction of the ER cost, often ranging from $100 to $300. It is an incredibly cost-effective, efficient alternative for sudden, minor injuries.
But what if you are frozen with indecision? It's 11 p.m., your toddler has a strange rash and a fever, and you are sitting in your living room terrified, wondering, is this an ER situation or an urgent care situation?
You don't have to make that clinical judgment alone. There is a secret weapon built into almost every insurance plan. Take out your physical insurance card and flip it over. On the back, you will almost certainly see a toll-free number labeled 247 Nurse Hotline or Nurse Advice Line.
Right.
You can call this number at any hour of the day or night. You will be connected to a registered nurse. You explain your symptoms, and they will run your data through a highly tested clinical algorithm. They will tell you definitively, take an ibuprofen and call your doctor in the morning, or go to urgent care tomorrow, or I'm calling an ambulance right now. You need to go to the ER. They take the guesswork out of the crisis.
Okay, let's play out the worst-case scenario. The nurse tells you to go to the ER. You arrive, you manage to walk through the sliding glass doors, and because of movies and television, you expect an entire team of doctors to swarm you and rush you to a bed. Instead, you walk up to a desk, they take your blood pressure, and they tell you to sit in a plastic chair in a crowded waiting room. And you wait. And you wait. 2 hours go by, you are in severe pain.
If I've been sitting in an ER waiting room for 3 hours, did the staff just forget about me?
No, they haven't forgotten you. You are simply experiencing a systemic process known as triage. Triage is a cold, mathematical, clinical prioritization system born out of battlefield medicine. When you check in, a highly trained triage nurse rapidly assesses the baseline severity of your condition and assigns you a priority level.
So it is absolutely not a first-come, first-served system like a deli counter. Not at all. It is based entirely on medical acuity and the immediate threat to life. If you arrive at 8 p.m. with a broken arm that hurts terribly but isn't life-threatening, and someone else is wheeled through the doors at 9 p.m. having an active, massive heart attack, the heart attack patient completely bypasses the waiting room and takes the bed.
Wow.
It feels deeply unfair, agonizing, and frustrating when you are the one sitting in the plastic chair in pain. But triage is the only system designed to save the maximum number of lives with limited physical resources.
But the key piece of advice here is that your triage status is not necessarily permanent. Communication is your only defense. If you are sitting in that waiting room with your broken arm and suddenly you start feeling extremely dizzy, or you begin experiencing a strange, sharp pain radiating through your chest that wasn't there when you arrived, you do not suffer in silence.
Exactly. You do not wait politely. You must immediately walk back up to the triage nurse and explicitly inform them that your symptoms have escalated or changed significantly. That new clinical information could instantly elevate your triage priority level and get you pulled into the back.
Okay. The crisis eventually passes. You get treated, you get discharged, and you go home to heal. The physical emergency has been resolved. But in the American system, the trauma isn't quite over, because about 3 to 6 weeks later, the mail starts arriving. And this kicks off what I like to call the paperwork hangover.
Oh, yes.
It is a second wave of distinct panic.
Because navigating the physical recovery is only half the battle. Now you are forced to navigate the labyrinth of the medical billing process. And the American medical billing infrastructure is notorious for generating profound, paralyzing confusion among patients.
Let's clear up the single biggest point of confusion right out of the gate. A few weeks after your hospital visit, you open an envelope from your insurance company. Inside is a densely packed document featuring a truly massive, terrifying dollar amount. Across the top, it says EOB. What on earth is that document and why is it ruining my day?
EOB stands for Explanation of Benefits. And the single most important fundamental thing you need to internalize is that an EOB is absolutely not a bill. I will repeat that because it causes so much unnecessary panic. It is not a bill. Under no circumstances should you write a check for the massive number printed on that piece of paper.
Then what is its purpose? Why mail me a document with a $10,000 number on it if I'm not supposed to pay it? Is it just psychological warfare?
It feels like it, but its actual purpose is transparency. The EOB is a chronological accounting document. It shows you the financial journey of your medical claim behind the scenes.
Okay, what are the columns?
It generally lists 4 distinct columns of data. First, you will see what the hospital originally charged. This is the charge master rate, which is usually a wildly inflated, completely fictional number.
Typical.
Second, you will see the negotiated allowed amount. This is the much, much lower rate that your insurance company actually agreed to pay based on their secret contracts with the hospital. Third, you see the amount the insurance company actually paid out of their own coffers. And finally, the fourth column shows the remaining balance that you, the patient, will eventually owe.
So the EOB is just showing me the math equation. It's showing me the discount I got for being in network. So when do I actually pay?
You wait, you put the EOB in a folder, and you wait until you receive a separate, formal document mailed directly from the hospital or the doctor's billing office. This document will clearly be labeled as a patient statement or invoice. That is your actual actionable bill. You compare the final number on the patient statement to the final number on your EOB. If they match, that is what you owe.
But here is where it gets really interesting. And by interesting, I mean borderline criminal. When that official patient statement finally arrives in your mailbox, you shouldn't just sigh, pull out your credit card, and blindly pay it. Because the error rate in American medical billing is nothing short of staggering.
It represents a massive, unchecked systemic failure. Independent studies and billing advocates consistently indicate that up to 80% of hospital bills contain significant financial errors. 80%.
How is an 80% failure rate even mathematically possible in a modernized industry? Are they just making things up?
It happens because the underlying architecture of medical coding is overwhelmingly complex, and human beings are responsible for navigating it. Every single bandage, every pill, every minute the doctor spends in the room is translated into a highly specific alphanumeric code part of a system called ICD-10, which contains tens of thousands of codes.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. The errors occur in several ways. Sometimes it's a simple catastrophic typo. A tired clerk accidentally hits an extra zero, turning a $500 charge into $5,000. Sometimes it's a lack of communication, where they accidentally charge you for a scheduled MRI that was canceled at the last minute. Or they might accidentally process your claim as out of network when you were fully in network.
And we also have to talk about the financial incentives here. Hospitals are highly incentivized to maximize revenue. This leads to a practice called upcoding.
Yes, upcoding is a pervasive issue. This is when a hospital intentionally or accidentally codes a routine, straightforward 15-minute visit as a highly complex 45-minute comprehensive examination, which reimburses at a drastically higher rate. Or they code for an expensive brand name medication when they actually administered a cheap generic.
So what does this massive error rate mean for you, the listener? It means the burden of proof is entirely on your shoulders. You have to fight back against the bureaucracy. You have rights, and you must exercise them.
You absolutely do. If you receive a large, confusing medical bill, your very first line of defense is to pick up the phone, call the hospital's billing department, and explicitly demand an itemized bill.
Yes.
Do not accept a generic summary statement that just says, emergency hospital services, $4,000. You have a legal right to demand a microscopic line-by-line breakdown of every single item you are being charged for.
And once you get that itemized bill, you grab a highlighter and you play auditor. You question everything. I see a charge here for a specialized blood test on Tuesday morning, but I was officially discharged and sent home on Monday afternoon. We need to remove this.
Exactly. You force them to justify the charges. And let's say the audit comes back clean. The charges are accurate, but the final number is simply astronomical and you genuinely cannot afford it. What do? You negotiate. Medical debt is very rarely set in stone. It is highly malleable.
That's good to know.
Hospitals would much rather collect 60% of a bill over time than send the full amount to a collections agency and get pennies on the dollar. You can call and ask to be placed on an interest-free payment plan. You can explicitly ask if they offer financial assistance or charity care programs for uninsured or underinsured patients. Many nonprofit hospitals are legally required to offer these, but they will never voluntarily tell you about them. You have to ask.
And if your insurance company flat out denied a claim for a surgery or a test that your doctor deemed medically necessary, you don't just accept defeat. You file a formal appeal. You demand that the insurance company have a peer-to-peer review with your actual doctor to justify the denial. It requires tenacity. It requires you to be an aggressive, relentless advocate for your own wallet.
It is exhausting, but it is the only way to protect yourself from systemic exploitation.
Okay, before we bring this deep dive to a close, we need to briefly step out of the general hospital and touch on specialized care vocabulary. Because in the U.S. system, the human body isn't treated as one holistic entity. It's carved up into different silos.
Right. Dental and vision care operate on entirely separate insurance plans and distinct sets of vocabulary. For the dentist, the core vocabulary revolves around preventative maintenance and structural decay. You schedule biannual cleanings where a hygienist removes hardened plaque. If the dentist uses a probe and finds a spot of active bacterial decay eating into your enamel, they will diagnose you with a cavity, which requires them to drill out the rot and place a filling to seal the tooth.
And for the eye doctor, whether that is an optometrist who prescribes your glasses or a medical ophthalmologist who treats eye diseases, you will need to describe highly specific visual symptoms. You might describe blurry vision where things lose their sharp edges, or you might complain about seeing floaters, which are those distracting tiny dark spots or squiggly lines that seem to drift across your field of vision when you look at a bright sky.
But the most profound, culturally significant, specialized vocabulary we need to discuss relates to mental health. And engaging with the system requires a vital understanding of the broader American cultural context.
Because the cultural perception and treatment of mental health vary wildly depending on where you are in the world.
It is a stark contrast. In many cultures globally, openly admitting to struggles with mental health, whether that is chronic anxiety, deep depression, or processing acute trauma, is still heavily stigmatized. It is often viewed as a personal moral failing, a sign of inherent weakness, or a shameful family secret that must be hidden away from the broader community.
But what is genuinely fascinating and honestly quite beautiful is that in the United States, over the last 2 decades, there has been a massive, sweeping, positive cultural shift regarding this topic. Seeking the clinical help of a therapist, a psychologist, or psychiatrist has been highly destigmatized, particularly among younger generations.
It is an incredible evolution. Engaging with the mental health system is no longer widely viewed as a sign of weakness. It is actively celebrated as a sign of self-awareness and strength. It is viewed as responsible, routine self-care.
It's treated almost exactly like going to the gym, but for your mind. You wouldn't feel ashamed to hire a personal trainer to help you fix a weak knee. You shouldn't feel ashamed to hire a therapist to help you process grief or manage anxiety.
Exactly. And the medical infrastructure has rapidly adapted to make this specialized care highly accessible and frictionless. Since the pandemic, telehealth, the practice of conducting full, hour-long therapy or psychiatric sessions over secure, high-pay compliant video calls from the privacy and comfort of your own living room, has become an incredibly popular and entirely standard option. You do not have to suffer in silence, and you don't even have to commute to a clinic to get help.
This has been an incredibly dense, wide-ranging deep dive. We have unpacked the intricate financial matrix of premiums and deductibles, provided exact phone scripts for bypassing gatekeepers, deciphered the paperwork trinity, fundamentally changed the examination room power dynamics, explored the massive pharmacy ecosystem, established strict crisis protocols for the ER, and given you the tools to fight the billing nightmare.
That's a lot of ground covered.
But we are absolutely not going to let you just turn off the audio and absorb this passively.
Yeah.
We are giving you actionable homework. 5 highly practical assignments to immediately apply what you have learned today.
Assignment number 1 is foundational. Take out your physical health insurance card right now. Actually look at it. Study the topography of the card. Locate your specific member ID number. Clearly identify whether you are enrolled in an HMO or a PPO, and locate the customer service and 204-7 nurse hotline phone numbers printed on the back.
Assignment number 2. Create a vital medical vocabulary card. You can write this on a physical card and put it behind your driver's license in your wallet, or you can save it as an emergency graphic on your phone's lock screen. It should clearly list your blood type, a list of your current medications with their exact daily dosages, and any severe life-threatening allergies like penicillin or latex. If you are ever unconscious in an ambulance, this card effectively speaks for you.
Assignment number 3. Practice the art of self-advocacy. Use the 6-dimension framework we discussed, the history of present illness, to write out a perfect, highly precise description of the very last time you felt ill. Practice mapping the location, timing the duration, and using precise adjectives to describe the character of the pain. Build the muscle memory of the police sketch.
Assignment number 4. Do not wait for a chaotic, terrifying, bleeding crisis to figure out your local geography. Open the Map app on your phone right now. Look up the exact physical address of the nearest urgent care clinic and the exact physical address of the nearest level 1 emergency room. Save them as favorites in your phone so you can route to them instantly in a panic.
And finally, assignment number 5, which is the advanced practical challenge. Tomorrow, call the customer service number on the back of your insurance plan. You do not need a complex medical crisis to justify the call. Just call and ask a single basic test question such as, "Hi, can you please confirm my exact out-of-pocket maximum for this calendar year?" The goal isn't just to get the answer. The goal is simply to practice navigating the maze of automated phone menus and confidently communicating with an insurance representative using their terminology.
Because every single time you practice interacting with the machinery of this system, it becomes a little less terrifying. You become a little more powerful.
And as we close, I want to leave you with some profound, genuine reassurance. If you are sitting there feeling overwhelmed right now, if you have ever felt completely defeated by a dense medical bill or humiliated because you didn't understand an insurance form, please remember this. The American healthcare system is objectively, mathematically, and linguistically hyper-complex. It is designed to be opaque. Your confusion is an accurate reflection of a massive systemic failure, not a personal intellectual failure. Millions of native-born Americans, doctors, and nurses are just as overwhelmed as you are. You are navigating a labyrinth.
Which brings me to a final provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. Think about everything we've unpacked today. Think about the deductibles acting as financial bouncers, the invisible traps of out-of-network providers, the endless prior authorizations, the fact that 80% of medical bills contain errors, and the 6-dimension frameworks required just to be heard. Consider how the actual dense language of healthcare literally shapes the physical, biological care a human being receives. If the American medical system implicitly requires its patients to be their own aggressive, highly articulate, hypervigilant legal and financial advocates just to secure the right treatment at the correct price, who falls through the cracks?
That's a huge question.
What physically happens to the people who simply don't have the words? Who don't understand the 6-dimension framework? Who don't know they have the right to appeal a rejected claim or demand an itemized bill? It makes you step back and genuinely wonder how much of what we call good health in this system is actually just a result of having good communication skills.
That is a haunting, deeply vital question to ask about the structure of our society.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you feel a little more armed and a little more ready for whatever comes next. Remember, your health matters. Your time matters. And your voice absolutely matters. Keep asking questions, keep demanding transparency, and keep advocating for yourself. See you next time.